Hello, welcome to another edition of Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. Please, if you have not subscribed, do so. And if you like this video, hit the like button. I'd appreciate that. Okay, so by the way, yesterday, if you've seen yesterday's video, after I shot that video, I almost sunk. I almost sunk that side by side, literally. Had to like cut down trees to get it out, some more stuff. And I had a chainsaw with me. I'm glad I had a chainsaw. Always bring a survival kit if you're going in the woods for any reason, on any vehicle, foot, whatever. Because we got real lucky last night. We could have been stuck up in those mountains. Okay. This one's about a correctional officer by the name of Sneaky Pete. There were some guys that were Leavenworth with me. A couple guys that didn't even know me, really, that were at Leavenworth at the same time that knew about Sneaky Pete, that have said several times, you need to do something about Sneaky Pete. Let me go back a little ways. Let me say this. So, correctional officers. You have a lot of different correctional officers. You got the ones that are just gung-ho. They just get off on messing with guys. They want to tear apart your cells. They want to find any little bit of contraband. They want to write you up. Back in the day, they used to give money for every correctional officer that found a knife. I don't know how that works now, but they used to get money. I think it was like $50. It was something. I forgot. There are some correctional officers on here that can say that. Or that can tell me or comment on how much money they used to get. But correctional officers have changed a lot. You still got your guys that are gung-ho. You got the majority just want to collect a paycheck, don't really even want to do anything, and that includes their job detail. A lot of them just want to sit on the computer. But that all changed in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, specifically. That's what I'm talking about. When they started building all these new prisons after 2000, I think it was. The prison population from the 80s until now exploded because of the tougher sentencing laws on drugs, mandatory minimums, and et cetera. The pendulum is swinging now, but back in the other direction, but there's still, a lot of prisons, 100 and something in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And a lot of those jobs, correctional officer jobs, are in rural areas or areas that needed economic growth. So you have people that are just trying to, normal Joes are correctional officers now. Got a lot of ex-military going to corrections. Anyway, I really don't know what this guy Sneaky Pete was. Sneaky Pete was famous at Leavenworth. If you did time at Leavenworth, you knew who Sneaky Pete was. He had a little beard, perpetually had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And what he did that other correctional officers didn't do back then was he wore soft sole shoes. And the reason he did is because he didn't want you to hear him walking. When I first came into the feds, I had been to state prison, and when a correctional officer enters a cell block or is starting to do rounds, people start yelling, "Man walking, man walking." Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. They didn't do that in the feds. And as a matter of fact, there were some officers that if you did that, would go shake down yourself. Sneaky Pete was one of them. I got hit. I did this when I first got there. And he says, "Oh yeah, where'd you come from?" And I told him I did time in California. And he just goes, "Step out, California," and just ransacked myself for alerting people that he was walking. This guy came to work to bust people. He got off on busting people. He thrived busting people. He really didn't go on the petty contraband, the extra food, the kitchen food. He wanted drugs. He wanted knives. He wanted booze. And sometimes, there's been a couple occasions when he's even let the booze be poured out if he found it. But in general, no. He's going for knives, booze, and drugs. He knew his inmates well. Whatever block he worked in, he was thorough. He knew every individual. He knew who you are, even if you didn't know him. Excuse me. The first time I got hit by Sneaky Pete, well, that first time is when I yelled, "Man walking." and he came and tore apart my cell. But the first time he knocked me off was an absolute, it was a fluke. My neighbor, Alex, in cell 113 was smoking weed, and I was in cell 111 getting high on heroin. And Sneaky Pete walked, and he wasn't a tall guy, and he would cruise by the cells, and he'd do the side-eye thing. If he couldn't see contraband, or if you were occupying your cell, or if there was a number of guys in the cell, he'd usually open the door to see what's going on. So he peeped in a couple cells, did a little sniff check. I remember when he did this, I remember smelling my neighbor's smoke, and about 5 minutes later, Pete walked by. He stopped at the cell, went next door, smelled, and then went about his business. What he did was he wrote up a report to get people in cell 111, my cell, and my cell in 113 bottled the next day. That's how he operated. So he wanted, so he can see who was smoking the weed. Well, I wasn't smoking weed, but I was dirty for heroin, and he knocked me off that way. I was pretty sick about it too. That was my first shot ever in the Bureau of Prisons, first disciplinary or infraction. Spent 60 days in the hole on that one. Lost 5 years good time. 5 years good time. 5 years phone, 5 years commissary, 5 years visitation, except for immediate family. So yeah, first dirty UA. It wasn't very much longer after I got out of the hole that I had got a bunch of weed. And when I say a bunch of weed, take a chapstick cap, fill it with marijuana, and I'm talking, break it down, shake, fill it, and that was $50 back at that time. I had got a deal on some. I've got numerous caps, $500 worth or something. And what I had done was, because Pete was working our block, he was our block officer. The officers switch every quarter in the feds. An officer can stay in the same unit or the same position for up to 9 months or 3 quarters. And then they rotate them. And that's so they don't get too close to the inmate, whatever. And I can see why they do that. So I knew when I got this marijuana, I knew Pete was working our block. So of course I needed to be extra careful. When Pete was working, you had to be on your toes. That was when you get high, make sure you stay out of his, out of his sight, because he was looking for your eyes. You had to be on your toes. And you know what? That's a good thing. Those so-called dickhead correctional officers that really fuck with people. The truth is if you're doing dirt, they help you, because they help you stay aware. Because you get so lax after so long, you get relaxed, and you just like, oh, these guys aren't going to find this, or these guys, and you just start running amok. But when you got officers that are gun ho, it really helps if you're doing dirt. I know, because I did dirt. Okay, this time I had taken all these caps of pot, smoked some, of course, but I'd taken it and I'd put it in the battery section of a little baby boom box. We had little baby boom boxes, miniature, with little speakers, sounded like tin cans. But right in the back, you can plug them in, which we had plugs in our cells, or in the back you can take out D batteries. We had D batteries back then, or C's, I think they took. I forgot. And I just put the pot in the back of the batteries. For whatever reason, Pete was on to me. He knew I had drugs, and I don't know who snitched me out, but somebody did, because he went to my cell looking for drugs. Okay. Well, I was shitting bricks. I didn't want to lose the pot, for one thing, and I didn't want to go to the hole. This is really before I started going to the hole regularly. First 2 years, I didn't go regularly. I only went I went once or twice. But after those 2 years, and the hole was great, fun. I loved it. I didn't care. You couldn't, go into the hole, it didn't matter nowhere, it didn't matter. But Sneaky Pete shook down my cell, and he never found that pot. And I mean, he went through everything. Peanut butter jars, that was a good place for contraband, but it was too well known. We used to get Tide boxes, and we'd open the boxes at the bottom, stuff the drugs in, and then reseal them. He opened the Tide boxes in my cell. I mean, this guy was going for it, and I can't believe that he made that rookie mistake of missing the back of the battery. I shouldn't say rookie mistake, but as thoroughly as he shook down, he should have got me. Now, let me go a little bit more about this guy's character. We had pipe chases in Leavenworth. In B block and D block, but D block was a protective custody unit. But in the B cell house, that was one of the older cell houses. They have pipe chases, so the cells are, so when they're walking through, the toilets are on the back sides of the walls, so the officer can walk through the pipe chase and look in the vents, or smell through the vents, or stand and listen in the vents for conversation. That's what Pete did regularly. He spent half of his shift working in the pipe chases. When he wasn't in the, not half, but a lot, okay? When he wasn't in B upper, they had a catwalk, an old catwalk that went along the wall from back in the day. And he would get on that catwalk, which no other cops did, and he'd walk that catwalk looking in people's cells. They had 3 tiers in B upper. But the guy was notorious. Everybody called him Sneaky Pete for a reason. He had more knives, more drug busts, more than any other correctional officer. In A and C cell houses, they had their pipe chases, and they had little windows in the back, and the cops could walk through and look through a full-length window about that wide. And when Pete worked over there, he got numerous guys through those little windows, especially in A and C. But Pete was he was on me. You know, he knew I was one of the guys that was involved in that scene. So he would let up. You know, he'd let you fall asleep, or try to let you fall asleep, and then he'd hit back. But it was a cat and mouse game constantly. And I mean, when I tell you that this guy can find a knife in a solid wall, I mean, he found them. The best who ever did it. And always remember, walking with the cigarette hanging outside his mouth with a little shit-eating grin. Little curmudgeon-looking guy. I mean, really, I'm not putting him down. And those soft sole shoes, and a really quick stride, you know, quiet because of those shoes, but really good. Now, I remember seeing Sneaky Pete the last day I was in Leavenworth. Me and a bunch of other my brothers were sent out of Leavenworth and sent to different prisons because of gang stuff. And Pete, I'll never forget, he said there was me, Scott Tully, Jeremy Ida, there was a few of us. He said, "I'll see you, Rosso. I'll see you again. I'll be seeing you." No, I'm sorry. He said, "I'll be seeing you, Rosso." And then he said, "Well, I'll be seeing you guys." Like, what the, yeah, oh, all right, you know, let us back out on the line, you know, why can't we be on this prison? Why, you know, why did you choose our gang to get rid of it, not the other gang at that time? Anyway, so let me tell you this. I went to Lewisburg. I was at Lewisburg about a year. I lived in F block, cell 207, best cell in the best unit in the prison. Loved that cell. The time I did in Leavenworth, it was some of the best time in my prison career. Anyway, I was laying on the bunk one day in my cell in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Sneaky Pete was a correctional officer at USP Leavenworth. If I didn't make that clear, I apologize. That's where he did his time. COs always say, you know, how much time you got in? No, I got 20 years in. They're doing time too. And you know what? All BS aside, COs do time too. Anyway, I'm laying on my bunk at Lewisburg. And I just wake up, and I'll be damned if my door didn't open and there stood Sneaky Pete in street clothes, regular clothes. And I didn't know if I was dreaming. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And he had his little cigarette in his mouth. "What's up, Rosso? I thought you didn't see me again. What do you got in here?" It's like a fucking nightmare. Oh, this guy went on vacation to USP Lewisburg. That's how seriously this dude took his job. for vacation, he went to Lewisburg. Now, I remember like clowning him, like, you sick son of a bitch. Did you really go on vacation to Lewisburg? He says, well, it's like a training thing. I guess I go learn from the officers, but yeah. So it was just crazy to see this guy get, and sure enough, he went through and started shaking down the cell. But it was more of like a for show and a joke. But, and every other dirty white boy that went there. So there was 5 of us that got sent there originally, and he hit all of our cells. But it was just crazy to see this guy coming from Leavenworth and just popping up at Lewisburg all this time later in regular clothes and say, all right, and just, shake down. So I'm sure Sneaky Pete's retired by now. But he's one that nobody who did time at Leavenworth, nobody who did dirt at Leavenworth will ever forget if they were there when Sneaky Pete was there. I know that he's went into cells before and got his ass beat. Didn't faze him one bit. Tough son of a bitch. I'm not saying he was fighting all that, but he didn't back down. He wasn't scared. So today I'm giving my props to Sneaky Pete. Yeah, it's about a correctional officer. I get it. Definitely wasn't close with the guy. It was always, every time I saw him, I usually shook. So it's all I got to say. So hope you enjoyed it. Sneaky Pete, got that respect, bud.